Hello, everyone. My name is Roopa Sunku, and I am the Chief Evangelist at Touch a Life Foundation. Along with my real daytime job with Oracle, I run the Programs and Release Office. I'm super excited to be able to run this panel for us with the World Kindness Day that we are celebrating today, utilizing some of the UN's SDG processes or best practices. We're going to be talking a little bit more about SDG 8. And I have a super exciting and very well accomplished women's panel. And I'm super proud again to be running this panel or hosting this panel with very accomplished women. So I'd like to go ahead and take a minute to have them introduce themselves to you. And let's start with Shabri Raja, the CEO of Nepris. Shabri?
Thank you, Roopa, first of all, for having us and for Touch a Life to provide this opportunity. Excited to be here. My name is Shabri Raja. I'm co-founder and CEO of Nepris. Nepris is an education technology company. We're a cloud-based platform. We sit in between industry and education with the primary mission to connect working professionals directly with students virtually, with the goal of bringing real-world relevance and career exposure to learning. We founded this company with a mission to sort of bring equity of access in education by connecting especially minority students, girls, and rural students to role models and working professionals that they normally don't have access within their own communities. I mean, this mission is very personal to me because I myself grew up on a coconut farm in South India to parents without college degrees. So my career path has been sort of forged through chance meetings and luck to some extent. We can't rely on that luck and chance, encounters as a strategy to build our future of work. So it's really important. I mean, many decades later today, my kids are growing up in a very different environment in Austin, Texas, in a household where two parents are working in the technology industry. And I still see a problem that is the lack of exposure. So, I mean, if kids in these environments are still having a problem of not understanding how what they learn in the classroom actually matters to them in the real world and how they choose their high school courses or what's after high school or what kind of career paths await for them, we're really, seeing this disengagement at a very early age. If we really are serious about helping that future of work and the pipeline of skilled workers coming through this pipeline, we need to start at an early age. And that's exactly what we do. We're giving teachers and schools the tools and companies the tools to be able to find and connect with each other to bring that real world exposure to every student, no matter who they are or where they are from.
Excellent. Thank you, Shabri. And I think the biggest takeaway for me from what you've just shared is that real life experience and the inspiration that we, the haves or the people that have had the opportunities can share back with the community. Thank you so much and welcome on this panel. Let's now move on to Lauren, who is with the Houston's Dress for Success program. And Lauren, all yours.
Thank you, Rupa. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the panel and World Kindness Day. And with Dress for Success Houston, Lauren Levicki Courville, I'm president of the affiliate here. We're the third affiliate up and running, which is now a global organization and over 40 countries and 140 affiliates worldwide. So while we may be doing work here in Houston, there is a vast expansion of affiliates and impact that so many women are making globally to ensure that we empower and uplift women in our communities, not only with professional attire, which is how we started. So our name, Dress for Success, leads to that, and how much we've grown over the past 23 years as an affiliate in Houston beyond the suit to provide that ongoing personal and professional development and network of support exposure and opportunities through financial literacy and mentoring and health and wellness. So it's a holistic approach to a woman so she feels confident in her journey, so she can uplift her children and be there to just build up communities throughout the world, and especially here in Houston.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. Super exciting to hear the engagement and the empowerment for women that speaks to my heart, and I'm sure it speaks to all of us on this panel today. So welcome, Lauren. Let's now move on to Susan. Susan, you're with IYF, and can you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yes, thank you, Roopa. And it's just fabulous to be here with this amazing group of women as panelists. So thanks to the Touch of Life Foundation for pulling us together and really looking forward to this time. As Roopa mentioned, I'm Susan Reichle. I'm the president and CEO of the International Youth Foundation, which was created more than 30 years ago with the mission of equipping and inspiring young people all around the world. And over more than 3 decades, we have worked in 105 countries and always through local partners and with the private sector. And I think that's a really unique model, because ultimately wanting to have an impact and do well and helping young people do well in the world requires partnership. And I think that's one of the themes we'll probably talk about today, and all of us working together on this really important time of World Kindness Day requires partnership and people coming together. The one piece I'd want to emphasize, and how IYF has done this over the years, has been through a flagship life skills program, because as we know, life skills are enduring skills. Technology will change as we've experienced, but those really foundational skills of communication and team building and conflict management are so important for all of us throughout our lifetime. And it's just been an incredible pleasure for me over the last 4 years since I've been with IYF to really help advance that mission. And one of the core values that we have as well is the importance of empathy as we work in partnership with young people and work in partnership across the globe. And just one personal note to share: prior to coming to IYF, I was with the United States Agency for International Development for 25 years, working around the globe, and just wanted to also do some work here in the US. And that's one core part of our mission at IYF. And it's just been a pleasure, and it's great to join all of you.
Excellent. Susan, some of us are moms on this panel and can relate to what we as women want to empower ourselves, as well as empower our next generations to come. So I think that touches my heart from the perspective of what you're doing today. And thank you for doing what you got going there as a movement and being part of World Kindness Day as well. Lastly, or most importantly, we have Summer McAfee. And every time I see your name, I think about the computer checks and activity that goes. I hope you're part of that family, and tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you're doing for USAA, please.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, Roopa. I'm so glad to be part of the panel. And I'm not sure that I'm really directly connected to the McAfees that do that part of the business. I wish I was, though. But I've been a lead program manager for the last 5 years here in Central Texas. And I grew up as a military brat. So when you think about community and mentorship and giving back and empowerment, that's really been part of my DNA. So being a military brat, I always was moving. Our family was, constantly moving every 3 to 6 years. And so I always was finding other people that poured into me through various nonprofits and programs. And now in my current role, I feel that I get an opportunity to pour back into the community. So mentoring and just giving back is just part of who I am. It's my biggest passion. And one of my personal sayings is, you are not your zip code. So I always want access for students and for adults that no matter where they live in their city or their country, I want them to have the same access and opportunities that maybe are not always available. And so that's really what gets me, driven and excited and motivated to give back in my own community. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's exciting to have all of us. So lastly, I have to say that a story from my experience mentoring with Touch a Life Foundation has been that I've started a series of podcasts that I do on a weekly basis that we televise, or not televise, but send out on our radio waves through Touch a Life Foundation Radio, or TAL Radio as we call it. And it has been super exciting to kind of just think about all the experiences and the richness of the community that we get around us, because we're sharing, empowering, and learning about the people in the community. So just the passion of being able to help people move to greater pastures or greener pastures is really what we want to mentor and inspire the people in the community. So Susan, I'd like to take this opportunity to help us all understand what SDG 8 is out to develop and encourage within the communities and globally as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try and be very brief and put into context, what do the Sustainable Development Goals even mean to what we were just discussing, the importance of investing in others and mentoring. Well, the Sustainable Development Goals, which were approved in 2015, are the world's first plan where all of us agreed universally as countries to set objectives, set goals. And the goal we chose to focus on today is the Sustainable Development Goal 8. And SDG 8, as I think everybody knows, is really designed to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full productive employment, and decent work for all. And we know we have a lot of work to do around this SDG. And just to put it in context, when this was signed by world leaders in 2015, and I mentioned I had been in the government, so I was part of that negotiation process for years, and it was really grassroots. It was very much bottom up, where the goals were designed. And we felt in 2015, we had made a lot of progress under the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, which were very top down. But this was bottom up. We were making progress in development. And frankly, it was just a historic moment, we felt universally, when it was signed in September 2015. But then the hard part began of driving towards the goals, and particularly this goal 8. And we were making progress as a community, but COVID-19 has set us back dramatically. And just a couple pieces of data that I do think are important to put in context to remind us why we have to double down, why this conversation today is so important. Because of the impact of COVID-19 in particular, we obviously knew that 90% of young people, children, young people, were out of school. More than 40% have had their education permanently disrupted. We know that 1 in 3 young people are, they're the ones who are chronically unemployed. 42% reported over the last 18 months as a loss of income, severe income loss. So we have a lot of work to do, not only just around this SDG, but most importantly, they're all interrelated. And so as a community, whether you're in the private sector, the public sector, the nonprofit sector, or volunteering in your communities, because I want to emphasize what Summer said, having grown up as well, moving around a lot, and what Sabari said, and obviously, coming from a different bracket, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can make a difference. And we have to make a difference. We have to double down right now in order to really make progress, because we have lost too much over these last year and a half, 2 years.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan, for that bit of detail and the call for action per se. I think, as you rightly called out, the concept of COVID impacting each of our communities has been just rampant in some communities, right from not being employed or not having the appropriate resources around you to be able to get your tasks and duties done and accomplished as a parent, as a child, as a student, as just any member of a community overall. And the corporate world and the public sector world has been introduced to this concept of hybrid workers, which people are getting used to, being able to work with remote working capabilities from home and still being able to separate the work life from your family life. All of these have had multiple impacts within our communities and what we see around us. So I'd like to go ahead and go around the panel again to see what you guys have to say. What are some of the things that you're doing in your current line of work that impacts this goal? And what are some of the changes that you're bringing into the engagement in terms of mentoring, opportunities, apprenticeships, or any of those? So let's start with Lauren this time. Could you share some input from your side, please?
Yes, thank you, Roopa. And Susan, thank you again for going through the Sustainable Development Goals number 8. And exactly, that's a lot of my colleagues and friends were talking about that now more than ever, the work that we do, when you look at barriers that women already faced to get to work, regardless of socioeconomic background, and then as well based on women that can be typically more in the underserved. Summer, to your point, it's not about the zip code, it's about the inclusion regardless, and how can we collaborate together and find that kindness, that empathy to empower and uplift. Because when you empower a woman, that ripple effect of her children makes that difference. And those barriers during COVID, and we're still in it, right, during this pandemic, have only heightened. So transportation, childcare, even access to technology. But if you want to upskill and you want to work remotely from home, but you're facing that you don't have high-speed internet, you don't have access to the technology, how can you even upskill to do that role rather than perhaps a frontline worker? So we have invested and really had the chance to not only immediately move into a hybrid model for our women in just 2 weeks in 2020 and provide that continued community of support, networking, talking through, because 70% of our population were impacted by the pandemic. And as we all were, but we wanted to keep that connection. And so they didn't feel isolated and alone, especially for our female veterans program. Those women, even more so as they're transitioning from military to civilian life, already that isolation sets in, and then you just add the layer of the pandemic. So the she session is real. How many women left the workforce? So how can we be there now that kids are in school? That removes one barrier, but how can we help? And we collaborate, all of same thing, Susan, is that collaboration. We work with over 120 nonprofits in the Houston community to ensure that we are connecting resources, so we're not duplicating efforts. And for our women, we're not government or United Way funded. So they know it's the Houston community investing in them and their future. And it gives them a lift that they are seen, that they matter, and that dignity and that respect, to be there for them through all the different attributes. So yes, now more than ever, we're ramping up our services, and we are providing them virtually and in person, because we want to be mindful of this current world that we're in, and how can we find the donors to help invest in technology so the women get it at their home, so it can access more scope and education for them.
Fantastic.
I could go on and
Thank
on, but I will be mindful.
Thank you, Lauren. That definitely created a little bit of energy, and I was very keen on listening to some of the barriers and hurdles that you all are trying to help the women in the community surpass. Thank you. Let's move on to Summer, and if you could tell us a little bit about what impact you're trying to create from your organization, please.
Yeah, so definitely, like you said, with hybrid work, it's really changed the way that you can volunteer today. And so being aware of that and actually responding to that. So knowing that our employees are juggling, homeschooling and all the things you need to do at home, and they're trying to work. And so how can we make it easier for you to engage with the community has been one of the key things that we've looked at. And some of that's been looking at opportunities for shorter engagement. So opportunities to volunteer for 30 minutes, opportunities to volunteer for 45 minutes during the middle of the day really gives people an opportunity to give back and not feel like they're having to, they can't make it to supper or they can't make it to their, child's soccer game because of, trying to juggle all the things. And so just listening to the employees, being aware of that, and then looking for opportunities where they can give back, they can make a difference, they can mentor somebody. You can help someone with a resume in 45 minutes. You can help someone with their LinkedIn profile in 45 minutes. You can help someone with a mock interview in 45 minutes. So you're making a difference for someone who maybe would not have had those tools or would have not had that mock session had it not been for you signing up and saying, yes, I can mentor, or yes, I can volunteer for this 45-minute session. So I think it's also reminding our employees that these short engagements make a difference. And so it's not always about really long engagement. Sometimes it's just knowing that you show up, you have a heart to give, and you can make a difference in a short amount of time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Summer. Going over to Shabri, what is the impact that you're trying to create out of Nepris?
So primarily, what we are trying to do is really bridge that gap, right? And bring equity of access to every student. And part of the job that we do, we didn't anticipate a global pandemic, but we started this company to be a virtual platform from day one, which actually has helped us quite a bit in growing and scaling over the last 18 months as well, post-COVID. So the foundation of the work that we do is really about addressing the 3 pillars of career. The number one is occupational identity. It's what students believe they can be. If they can't be what they can't see, so how do we bridge that gap and really connect students, especially students coming from underserved populations and communities where they really don't have this diverse population of adults who are in different types of jobs, right? So how can we sort of bridge this gap and give every student, no matter where they are or what their zip codes are, like Summer said, how do we give them that access through technology to connect them with diverse role models and professionals from across the country and across the world? That's number one, occupational identity, sort of broadening who they believe they can be so that they can aspire for things that they never knew existed. And the second pillar of career is skills. Majority of the school districts today talk about skills. That's a great first step. But what are we doing to really advance and give the students an opportunity to practice those skills, right? So there are many ways to address this problem, but how we address it is we're saying we're working with all these employers who actually are looking for these skilled workers at the end of the pipeline. So what kind of skills are they looking for, and how can they directly be involved with students in helping students practice those skills? So changing the way that we did project presentations in school, like you have capstone project presentations that high school CTE students are making. Prior to Nepris, they would be probably presenting to their teacher or maybe a couple of people from around the school. But the way we are trying to change that is to say, you can be presenting this to a panel of industry experts from Samsung, from AT&T, from Intel. That's totally possible. And that's really what we are bringing to the table. So through all of this, really, the pillar 1 and pillar 2, it all connects eventually to the third pillar, which is social capital. As you know, 8 out of 10 jobs are got because of who you know. So how do we really instill this relationship building in students at an earlier age so that when they're ready to actually pursue their first job. They know how to interact with people outside their own communities. They're comfortable with sort of building upon those relationships. So through all of this, giving a platform for every student to be able to meet diverse professionals, role models, and all kinds of people, not just from their community, but from everywhere, and be able to interact with them and present to them and get feedback from them and know how to build those foundational relationships to move on to that next level. So these are the three core areas we work on. And post-COVID, of course, even though we were a virtual platform, we had to really sort of pivot and change to support remote learners. And that has opened up a lot of challenges and opportunities as well. But it has also sort of, what we are seeing in the industry is this fear of virtual is beaten out of people now. Everybody wants virtual as a strategy, whereas what was a nice to have before has become a must have. So we're looking at completely transforming how industry engages with schools in every classroom, how we are working with employers to give them a platform to engage every employee with the students. And that's really where the biggest impacts are. Like, if we can, what I always say is, if this doesn't require months and months and years of mentoring, it just requires a spark. How can we create those sparks of exposure, that moments of discovery that actually can inspire a student to say, if he or she can do it, I can do it. And that's really the work that we do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was definitely very inspiring. And over to you, Susan, on what you're doing with IYF.
Yeah, thank you. 3 must be the magic number, because there are 3 core objectives that we have at IYF, but they're all interrelated. I think, as we've all been talking, and it's sort of like the SDGs, they're all interrelated, and we need to have those bridges. So our first is really helping young people unlock their agency. Everybody has potential. Everybody has something inside of them. And so much of it is working on those life skills to, unlock the potential so that they have the confidence to explore that, whatever they are passionate about, but also developing the skills, whether they are skills in analyzing information or being able to communicate more effectively, advocate, using evidence to be who they want to be. And the second is really focused on economic opportunity. And, as Summer just said, and I think it's so true, it's making sure that people are not their zip code, that they can really connect to the opportunity that exists. And so that's often for us working back from the market, understanding not just the labor market and the needs, but the needs of young people. If they're living in a community where they have to take 2 buses and they've got to watch their younger brother or sister at night, and we have to understand really at a very, very local level the needs of the young people who we're helping to connect to economic opportunity. And then the third area is ultimately about changing systems. And that's really what the SDGs are about, because we know this world is not working for everyone. We know that these systems are not inclusive. We know, and in our case, how to make young people be at the table, how to help make systems more youth inclusive. And so that is something that we've been able to see as well around the world ultimately take hold when, through partnership, year after year, working to change these systems. So long after IYF or even some of our corporate partners are gone, those systems have been permanently changed so that young people have greater opportunity. One short story I want to tell, because I think it captures a bit of what we're talking about, the moment we're living in right now. When COVID hit, obviously all of us had to change the way we work, and some did not have access to technology in order to stay on that path. One of our partners, Google, who we were working with in Mexico on an IT certification program, the COVID broke out right in the middle of the implementation of that first year of the program. Everybody worked hard in order to pivot the program, to deliver it virtually, but also to help those who did not have access to virtual technology to get the access, so that 83% graduated from that program and were able to access a job. 49% had increased income. And a statistic I wasn't happy about until I learned the backstory, 43% were women. And I said, why isn't it more than 50%? We're more than 50%. They said, Susan, it used to be 17%. So it was again a reminder of it is step by step and continuing to adapt, and people putting in those extra long hours, whether volunteering, mentoring, but just being creative, because the solutions really are inside ourselves.
Excellent, excellent. That it totally segues into what I wanted to share as next point of discussion. Susan, it's all about me. It's not about the selfishness, but about branding yourself and aiming to move towards that next level of accomplishment. Often enough, like Shabri said, my parents were in a coconut farm in South India, and I am now giving the people around me and my children opportunities. So in fact, about 3 weeks ago, I did a session for Shabri's team, and was talking to a number of kids in Louisiana. And the first thing that I normally ask them to do when I spell out me, for me, it is MEE, right? M standing for mentoring. And that is that trust that you create in the relationship with the people that you're working with. E is for the experience. It's people like to hear inspiring stories or play with things physically with their hands to be able to create that experience for them that has now become the next steps for them to go forward. And the third and the last, or the most important piece, is about engagement, trying to find what is unique for them with self-reflection. It's so important to self-reflect and listen to what you think is good for you and what you like to pursue, along with the influences that you have around you. So to tell you a little bit about the story of that student in Louisiana, he was a very intelligent high schooler, and talking to him about what is his goals to go into college. And he says, you know, my mom works with some taxes on a computer. I think it's easy work. I should be able to do it. And then he goes on to say his dad is works in a plant, and I think that's also easy work to do. So his life revolved around his mom and dad only. He wasn't looking at the greater ecosystem to be able to get inspiration. So I said, that's fine. I'm glad you're able to see what mom and dad do are easy work, but what is it that you want to do from your heart? And he says, I like to become a farmer. I said, that's fantastic. So have you thought about it? Have you gone out and talked to people around the farming industry? There's a lot of technology that is being used in the farms. So it looks like computers are easy things for you to pick up. So have you looked at that? And so just having that opportunity to talk to him about it and give him some ideas to consider down the line was just a very heartwarming experience for me. And I'm sure it opened up a whole bunch of avenues. And I need to go back to that student and see what he finally does in the next few years. So we'll have to ask Shabri to create some kind of a feedback loop on what these kids actually did and achieved out of their lives. So having shared that experience, I'd like to open it up now to Summer, asking you the next question. Any personal experiences or stories like I've just narrated that creates an impact and some kind of a change in the world that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, Roopa, so when you ask that question, the story that comes to mind from my own life is the fact about really asking for what you need, right? So all of us have different needs in different stages of our career and different stages of our personal growth and professional growth. And so I had asked a mentor not too long ago that I was really looking for an opportunity to get more experience with contracting. So I hadn't had a lot of exposure in corporate with contracts, and as far as the whole process, the compliance, the rules, all of those things. But one of the reasons I wanted the experience is because in reading the job description for the next role that what I would be applying for potentially, that was one of the requirements. So you need to also be proactive and be aware of what's out there and what do you need to know next. And by me just sharing that with my mentor, it gave me an opportunity and actually opened the door for me to get exposure and actually start working on one piece of the contracting for our area and actually get that exposure. And so I think part of it is just be your own advocate, right? And then be grateful, right? Pay it forward for somebody else, right? So when I am working on something related to contracts, I can give a shout out and see, is there anybody else in the team that wants to see this? Or is there someone I'm mentoring in the company that also would gain value from seeing like kind of the behind the scenes of the contracts or learning a little piece of it, even if they're not doing it today, is just so key. So I would just say, just be sure to ask for what you need. And then when you get that opportunity, don't be afraid to fail. You might make a few mistakes along the way. Contracts are not easy. Compliance is not always easy. Regulations are not always easy, and it's okay, but ask for help and really just be your own advocate. And it really can open doors for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Summer. Lauren, can you share something with us?
Sure. So kind of to both of your points, and I think it is as looking at you only know what you know or you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So if no one's ever shared with you before, again, that young man in Louisiana, when you haven't had the privilege of exposure, and that's in various ways, whether it is global travel through, being a military family summer, or, Sabari is a coconut farm, the lenses, right? The lens of opportunity. And in my life, I was fortunate that my parents always instilled that volunteerism and giving back. And through Girl Scouts, and I did Amigos de las Americas, and I was a health sanitation volunteer in Ecuador, and 16 years old, and had the reverse kind of culture factor as when I was coming back, and my friends were talking about things that just seemed unrelatable at that point, as far as, that boy never called me back or anything like that. And what really mattered, and seeing those families connect through soccer, through being there for each other, that community impact. And I think that is the challenge right now, is we're seeing this more of a division, and these big cities and this big, the technology is such a blessing, and how can we ensure that it creates connectivity throughout, and that personal connection. So for me, and that volunteerism and giving back, I always wanted to have the chance, and it's so fortunate to ask, and like you said, so be an advocate for yourself, and be in a role where you can be a part of an organization that is making an impact through collaborations and providing women the experience to, again, see their dreams and asking them. And for many of them, for the first time ever, a mentor is asking them, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? And how can we provide you the tools to get there? Because everyone wants different, and everyone defines success differently. And that's the beauty of the world. But I think that exposure and the lens of, we get to go have our women go to the Houston Symphony or the ballet, to the Astros game, to just, you never know where it may strike a chord, to find an inspiration and fill a void that we may have never known was there. So personally, I'm grateful for that chance to be able to, see further through so many different lenses in my family, and then also with the women we serve. So many incredible stories.
Fantastic. I just totally love the concept of looking at different perspectives or through different lenses. That can be very rewarding and very inspirational as well. Thank you, Lauren, for that. Shabri, any heartwarming or touching stories that you could share with us?
We have a lot of heartwarming stories that come through our customers every single day. In fact, we have a whole Slack channel for this. But I'll share a personal story that I kind of witnessed in my own household. When we, as I shared, when we first founded Nepris, we had a clear mission of sort of connecting industry and education to bring exposure. I talked about it a lot at many different venues. And I always claimed that this was working, right? I mean, we were connecting students, we were creating these sparks. And then it was a couple of years back, my younger one was in 2nd grade, my older one was in 5th grade, both boys. And their school was using Nepris, and they were running their STEM day or career day through Nepris. So I wanted them to be included, and I said, okay, so for your 2nd grade classrooms, who do you want to connect with? Or so my 5th grader said he picked his favorite video game and said, I want the founder of that video game to connect with my classroom, right? So whereas my 2nd grader said, I want dad to connect with my classroom. So then I asked my husband, can you talk about your career to a bunch of 2nd graders? And he said, how can I talk about semiconductors to 2nd graders, right? So anyway, it was a very interesting conversation. Long story short, he actually connected with a bunch of 2nd graders and came back just blown away by the kind of questions they asked. But that was a rewarding experience for him. But most importantly, I was always very nervous about asking my kids how their Nepris sessions went, because they're brutally honest sometimes, right? So when they came home in the evening, I was just, so nervous to ask him, so how was your session? And his eyes just lit up, and he said, it was so amazing. I had no idea dad did such a cool job. I want to be a semiconductor engineer too when I grow up. And they're both competitive tennis players. Even at that age, they were playing a lot of tennis. And he said, do you think, Ma, that I have to reduce the time that I'm playing tennis and focus on becoming an engineer? So I mean, for me, that moment, I actually immediately wrote a blog about it on my LinkedIn post. And for me, that moment was just, it was so many things I couldn't express, because it just provided the clarity of the mission that we've been talking about for so long, that I witnessed it in my own home. And to see that these kids are relatively privileged and they are growing up in privileged households, and yet they had no idea what their own parents were doing. I mean, he said, I knew dad got ready, went to work and came back. He had never heard of semiconductors or what the possibilities were. So he actually talked about how little mini computers called microchips go into, your teacher's wearing a Fitbit, and there's a microcomputer in her Fitbit, and there's a coffee machine that has a computer, and that's how it all works. And the kids they were immediately able to connect all those things and be inspired in that just one thing. But the reality is, after that, he's changed his mind 10 times. He wants to be a shoe designer, he wants to be this and that. but just even allowing them to see that possibility through someone else. But this story emphasizes the fact that seeing people within their own communities actually helps it make it more real for them. It makes them feel that if so-and-so can do it, I can do it. It's more achievable. So part of the work that we do is actually working with the school districts and finding local employers and others to actually connect with the students as well. And also working with schools to say, do you have a pool of parents? I mean, no matter what kind of school district, every school district has a pool of parents in different kinds of careers. How can we introduce your own parents to your kids through this, right? So that's a story that I'll never forget, and it's it created a lot of clarity for me in the mission that we're pursuing, and we continue to do that. So.
Excellent, thank you so much. Opportunities and dreams come true from the ideas that you generate. Thank you, Shabri. Over to you, Susan.
I love that story, Shabri. I only wish I would have had it when my kids were younger. It took about 20 years dragging them around the world that they're now like, oh, okay, that's what we were doing. So I'd love to share, just one story and that I've seen recently. I mean, there are so many, I think, as all of us said, but this one has really impacted me because it's a community that we've been working with the last several years, the South Side of Chicago, young people who do not have access to a lot of opportunity there. And in partnership with McDonald's, we started this youth opportunity program. And it was actually a group of young people in the program, again, getting access to employment, not McDonald's, but really it could be McDonald's, but any first job to really help them access their first job. And a group of them said, well, we've learned so much through this program. We'd like to, be able to pull others in. And that's the key, right? When someone in the community says, I want to help others access. And so we created this program called Youth Opportunity Ambassadors, which now is going across the United States. And we just recently had them do letters, letters to their future selves and sort of, previous selves, I should say. And what would they want them, what did they wish they knew, right? And so many of the letters were about, I wish I knew I could do this. I knew, that there's a hope out there, and having confidence and being able to, really speak publicly and have the communication skills and to help others. And so we featured that in an impact report in a video, and I just put it in the chat for those who want to go in and just see some inspiring stories. And some of it was really simple, giving them access to use LinkedIn. I mean, you just talked about how you immediately got on LinkedIn. Well, all of a sudden for these young people, not only to use LinkedIn or any source of media in order to access economic opportunity, but to tell their story, and most importantly, to pay it forward. Because if everyone just took, as Summer said, half an hour, 45 minutes out of their day to pay it forward, wow, we'd be on the path to SDG 8, not just SDG 8, but SDG.
Fantastic. Thank you, Susan. All right. That's been exciting. And we've been speaking for quite some time here on this panel. So I want to just take the opportunity to ask each one of you to leave just one message to the community and a call for action from your side. So let's start with Shabri this time.
Yeah, thank you, Roopa. I think Susan pretty much summed it up. My message is to encourage people to pay it forward. And specifically, there are various stakeholders within each community who can individually make a huge difference in every student's life and the career pathway, which eventually leads to financial independence. And that's really what we focus on. And what I call for action is through technology these days, you don't have to take half a day off to go really make a difference. You can sit at your desk, take 30 minutes, and really impact thousands of students across the country and within your own communities. That's the message I would like to leave.
Thank you so much, Shabri. Over to you, Lauren.
I think my main takeaway is to share, again, is that empathy and that opportunity to expand your scope and your lens, and that kindness, it's World Kindness Day. That kindness and consideration to others. You don't know what they've been going through, and they don't know what you've been going through. And the chance to, like we're all sharing, to volunteer, to give back. And that's the beauty of the accessibility in during this pandemic, is through virtual volunteering, you are still making an impact, and sharing your information makes you feel proud. It empowers that woman or that young adult or child, that human, that we're all a part of this fabric. And the stronger that we are all together, the stronger that we can continue to forge through and make a difference globally. So be kind, give back.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. Over to you, Summer.
Yes, as we're closing out the World Kindness Day discussion here, the thing I would share is send the elevator back down. We often hear about sending the elevator back down when it comes to executives sending it back down, but I want to charge each of you listening to this that you've got access to an elevator. You might be like, well, no, Summer, I'm a cashier, or I'm a first year, student, just got out of college, or I'm graduating high school next month. you've got access to some things, you know some things, you can help somebody else. And so no matter where you are in your career, where you are in life, just pay it forward. And I would just tie in one other point is the fact that if you schedule it, it gets done. So if you're someone who's finding it hard to volunteer and give back, imagine if you went through your 2022 calendar right now and said on the last Thursday of every month, I'm going to block out an hour and a half. I guarantee you right now, you might not know where you're going to give back or how you're going to give back. But if you block out an hour and a half the last Thursday of every month or whatever day works for you, I'm telling you, there's stuff in the community that you can do in an hour and a half or 45 minutes that makes a difference. So schedule it, do it, be part of the goodness that's happening in the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Summer. And over to you, Susan.
Well, my colleagues have all made outstanding recommendations and points. And so on World Kindness Day, I will just leave one thought, and that as we pay it forward, we send that elevator down, we act with empathy, we also grow. And that is the beauty of really giving back and volunteering and investing in others. So I think for all of you out there, I think you taking these steps and scheduling it, and we promise you that it will also be very good for your soul and not just for the world. So leave it there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I just want to take this minute to say thank you, ladies, for this wonderful discussion, conversation that's hopefully going to spark excitement, engagement, and enlightenment to all of those who listen to us on World Kindness Day. From the bottom of my heart, I'd like to say thank you once again for being part of Touch a Life's World Kindness Day event. And to all of you listening, all of these resources will be available through Touch a Life Foundation for you folks to connect with us through the Career Help and the Mentor Hotline or Touch a Life Tal Scout program. And we would love to engage with you and take more of your stories of inspiration and be an inspiration to the people out there in the community and the world at large. So thank you once again, and have a great evening.